I'm Rabbi Jeremy from Mahar, and this is the second in our series of videos on making meaning through humanistic Judaism, finding ways to make life more meaningful, to find a little bit of grounding, finding ways to feel better using the tools that humanistic Judaism provides. Last week we talked about gratitude practices. This week I want to talk about something that is actually really a problem for us in this period where COVID-19 and the precautions for it are really driving a lot of what we do, and that's what's happened to time. So one of the things that's happened to time for a lot of people is time has lost its structure. We're not going to school, we're not often going to jobs, we're going to stores infrequently. We're not going to the stores we're used to going to. We're going to only the grocery store maybe, or the home improvement store, but you can't go buy clothes, you can't go to the mall. We're not leaving the house for work, which does a couple of things. For a lot of people who aren't leaving the house to go to work, who are functioning at work through remote video calls, phone calls, things like that, the boundaries between work and home are gone. And that's a geographical problem, but it's also a time problem because there's more of an expectation that you're always accessible. Because after all you have to do is open a laptop and push a button, and there you are in a Zoom call with whoever, wherever they are. So one of the challenges is putting structure back into time that used to kind of order itself based on places you need to be. A lot of us don't have places to be, and that undoes a lot of how we would structure our time. So I want to talk about some approaches that Judaism has to putting structure into time that we can use to kind of find more meaning, find more rootedness in this period. The one that is always the easiest, in a way, is Shabbat, right? Shabbat happens once a week, Friday night through Saturday night. And if you ask the kids in our congregational school, what's the next holiday? They almost always say Shabbat because it's almost always the right guess. This week that wouldn't be true because I'm recording this just a few hours before Shavuot begins. So they would get that question wrong if I asked them this week. But ordinarily it's the right one because Shabbat gives structure to the Jewish week. Shabbat is, in our minds, is a day of rest, and so in some ways should function differently. Although if you really dig down into how Shabbat works, even in a traditional Jewish setting, you discover that actually Shabbat works like a lot of other days. The day is still divided up on the traditional Jewish clock in the same ways as it would be were it Wednesday. Morning services are supposed to happen between time X and time Y, afternoon between Y and Z, evening between Z and A. So there's still the day-to-day structure within Shabbat, plus the fact that Shabbat happens once a week and you can kind of time your week with it. But there's another tool that's in the Jewish toolbox that when you first think about it in these terms seems a little childish, and it's the countdown. So we're accustomed to the countdown in a few different settings, right? One of them is a countdown to the end of a quarter in a football game, right? There's the 2-minute warning, and you've got 2 minutes in order to get the job done, to score the next touchdown, whatever the case may be, right? There's even, if you play the Madden football game, there's even a 2-minute warning drill kind of a mode to the game. So that's one setting where there's a countdown. But the other setting where we think of countdowns a lot in terms of how regular people might structure their time is actually, at first glance, it's a little bit kid-like because it's kids counting down to their birthday, right? Counting down the number of days. Oh, 30 days left, 29 days left, right? And you kind of think, well, okay, I'm grown up. I'm not supposed to count down to my birthday, although some people do. But the reality is there's something to that, right? Because there's a fixed point in time that you're counting down to, and it gives structure to the period that you're counting down through. Judaism has a bunch of countdowns. So the one that we're finishing today is the counting of the Omer. So from the second day of Passover through to the beginning of Shavuot is a process called counting the Omer, which is connected to an agricultural cycle, which is really where Shavuot starts as a holiday. And it's 50 days. And each day in many synagogues, the day of the Omer is actually recited in the evening. So today is the first day of the Omer, the second day, the third day. And each of those days gets different significances assigned to them. This is a very grown-up version of a countdown, right? It's 50 days and you're counting down 50. So Judaism has a countdown tool. Judaism has another countdown tool that maybe is even more grown up, or at least more serious in a way, and that's the entire month before Rosh Hashanah, the month of Elul, is for many people a countdown to the Rosh Hashanah holiday. A countdown of increasing levels of anxiety, increasing levels of concern, increasing levels of awareness of the areas in which people have fallen short during the prior year. And we've said that Shabbat gives structure to the week, and Shabbat itself is preceded by a countdown. In Hebrew, the days of the week are not Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday. They're Yom Rishon, Yom Sheni, all the way up to Yom Shishi, and then Yom Shabbat, the seventh day. Yom Rishon is the first day. Yom Sheni is the second day. Yom Shishi, which we would call Friday, is the sixth day. So Hebrew actually identifies the days of the week with a kind of a countdown. We're counting down to Shabbat every single week because we start with one day and we go to the 6 days. And the 6th day is the last day before Shabbat. So countdowns are actually pretty meaningful. And we can use them to structure time. So the easiest one, as I mentioned, in terms of a Jewish tool, is counting down to Shabbat. And doing that allows you to kind of put a structure on time that used to exist, but maybe doesn't for you anymore. Most people's work week was Monday through Friday. So really, that countdown to Shabbat made a lot of sense. But when your work week has lost a lot of its form, or you don't have a work week, there are people who simply don't have work weeks anymore. They don't have jobs. Their job schedule shifted. There's all kinds of explanations for this. For people whose weeks don't really naturally end on Shabbat, with Shabbat, finding this countdown and saying, okay, I'm going to mark Shabbat can kind of create a structure where maybe there wasn't one before. And the other piece to this is that you put a practice on that countdown's ending. So last week I talked about the idea that it's not enough to just think to yourself, oh, I feel gratitude for XYZ thing, that you need a practice. Maybe it's journaling, maybe it's meditation. Judaism's version of this practice is saying something out loud, right? So you need a practice to make the structure happen, because otherwise you're mentally counting down to a day, which isn't always so effective, but having a practice is more effective. So the practice for Shabbat doesn't have to be a big thing. You don't have to put timers on your lights. You don't have to make a pot of stew that you're going to eat lukewarm the next day. You don't have to structure your day around going to a synagogue, not going to a synagogue. Humanistic Judaism provides a flexible tool in Shabbat. And the tool that you have on Shabbat is to say, okay, on Shabbat, on Friday evening, I'm going to do this thing. Or as a family, we're going to do this thing. We are going to get together, light candles, and talk about the best thing that happened to us this week. We are going to get together, light candles, and then we will tune into a Zoom-based Shabbat Friday night service. For those of you who are Macharniks or connected to the Machar community, we do this for you. We have Kabbalat Shabbat on Friday, and we have Havdalah ending Shabbat on Saturday. And for some people, Havdalah, Saturday evening, ending Shabbat, makes more sense than Friday does. You can kind of pick what you want to use, be flexible about it, but you'd still have to do something for the thing to take hold. And then you get to have a countdown to this time where you say, okay, this gives structure to my week and gives me an opportunity to think about the best thing that happened this week, or to just sit around the table and have dinner with people in a calmer setting where maybe I couldn't have done that before. Or even, I'm not going to do anything but log on to that Zoom service, and that gives me an opportunity to connect with community. So whatever it is that you try to do, Humanistic Judaism provides this tool, this countdown timer, essentially, to allow you to put some structure and to create some meaning in time that's started to become very undifferentiated. So we'll keep having these occasional videos on making meaning through Humanistic Judaism. Thanks for tuning in, and Chag Sameach if you're observing Shavuot, and Shabbat Shalom if you're watching this on Shabbat.